Let's take a tour of Glenn Keator's garden in Berkeley.
This is the backyard, and this is one of our native sunflowers, which is a spectacular perennial that dies back in the winter and every year grows this tall and blooms all summer. This backyard is a work in progress because I moved a lot of the original plants that were in here to the front strips, and that has given me room to create more native garden. So that's mainly what I'm after here. Well, let's just go over here. And there used to be a patio, and I took out all that and instead dug a pit here where I have a pond, and then I brought in all the rock from the local hills. It takes a while to establish a pond and get it stabilized. Then to make the pond look realistic, I dug a dry stream bed going out of it so that when it rains a lot, the overflow can go down into that dry stream bed. What I like to do is feature many of our native bunch grasses, which are perennial and live a long time in gardens. And so this is a new area right here that is going to be a bunch grass meadow. It already is a bunch grass meadow where I'm going to have a lot of wildflowers in the spring. And one of my favorite grasses is this large one called deer grass, or Muhlenbergia rigans. I'm featuring other bunch grasses, as over here I have the foothill needlegrass, which has this really feathery texture. So I have a whole variety of different bunch grasses in this section. And I've now created a shady nook by the back fence, and I'm just beginning to plant that. And so I'm going to feature a lot of ferns, like the fern over here, which is one of the easiest ones to grow if it has water, is lady fern, or Ethereum filix femina. So that's going to fill in nicely. I have a young sword fern here, and I have a number of smaller ferns back in here. What we have right here is one of our typical native shrubs from coastal regions, as well as the hot chaparral called coffeeberry, or Rhamnus californica. So it's an evergreen shrub. It can take on many forms. It can be pruned into a low ground cover or be a small tree. And here I've sort of pruned it up to reveal some of the branches. But the main thing about this plant is its fruits. Often they display several colors at the same time, and that makes it a very beautiful shrub to have in the garden in the late summer and early fall. One of the plants that I installed on a mound here as a wet grower to go with the pond, but you can see it's sort of stressed because due to our drought, I don't get to water this more than probably every 3 weeks or so. And so because of that, and because this in the wild grows in fairly moist habitats, it's a little stressed right now, but it will respond after the rains come again. So here on the other hand is another spice bush, and this is in a moist situation, so this is what it should look like if it has the moisture. And you can see it has very pretty red flowers all through the summer, and it has a wonderful spicy fragrance. Well, this beautiful thing is a very rare native from the mountains of Southern California that grows in boggy places, and so that's a really great hummingbird flower. I try to really feature a lot of red flowers and nectar-rich flowers for the hummingbirds. All the plants you see here are ones that you would find in really wet situations, and they include things like the lady fern here and the elk clover over here, and that's the whole trick, is knowing what grows where and where it does best. And of course, I'm still learning this myself. It's always a learning experience. I mean, I am not a purist by any means, despite books I may have written and so on. I really do believe in diversity, and I have to have some favorites. And so I have an apricot tree right here and a fig back here, because I think it's also nice to have some edible plants in the landscape. When I first moved here, this was all lawn. My technique for dealing with this front part, where the big lawn was basically to dig out all the weeds and then simply bring in soil and cover the soil. Most of the plants in the center part, where the big lawn was, are native. These are annuals that very nicely reseed themselves without being planted again. So every year they come up and rebloom. Those are another plant I never have to plant. It is perennial, but just short-lived perennial, so it seeds itself freely. And what's nice about that is it needs no care whatsoever.
Yeah, you can see already it's spread down the walkway.
Right. This beautiful white flower comes to us from the more deserty parts of California. And so they are evening bloomers, they have a wonderful perfume, and they're spectacular. And people think, gee, something that big? How could that be native? So all the plants you see here are from seed. And this is an annual that reseeded itself from last year. So this is less than a year's growth. So you can see some of our annuals get really big. And again, this blooms where it's really dry and even where it's really hot. And the nice part about this flower is it's open in the morning.
I love the way it moves too.
Me too. And it smells good too.
Does it?
Yeah.
So it's from Crete, huh?
Yes, from that area, right.
That's good for people to remember. We are Mediterranean climate, and we can use Mediterranean plants
Absolutely.
and mix them with the natives.
With the natives, yep. That's an Australian plant known as fanflower for the shape of the petals. And that has really spread. So it's a ground cover that blooms, well, I guess this has been blooming probably 6 months now.
Wow.
So,
You've incorporated your broken up cement, which I do too, and you use it as an edge.
we laughingly call that urbanite, and I believe in recycling everything I possibly can, so that came from the backyard. The idea is that I didn't have to take it to a dump.
Right.
Well, I think the most important thing is what we call sustainability, and that includes not only growing plants appropriate to our climate, like the Mediterranean climate plants and natives especially. It also includes the way you go about creating the hardscape, how you even go about caring for or maintaining the garden, because a lot of the methods we take for granted, like mowing and blowing, are just really not appropriate for a whole number of reasons. They use a lot of energy, and they also pollute in terms of sound, and they do pollute the air as well. So these are not healthy things. I realize a lot of people who are taking care of a large landscape feel they have to use these methods, but for the average gardener, you get more exercise and you get more connected to your garden by not using those methods.